It's the top 5 elf commanders.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Commander Countdown. This is the series where we poll the community on different commander topics and share those results with you. Today, we're going to be talking about the best elf commanders in Magic. So before we get started, we wanted to go over our honorable mentions that are not on the top 5 that you guys voted for. Don't forget, make sure you vote down below in the description so that way we have the best lists. But Veggie, there were some commanders that should have been on this list but weren't. What is your honorable mention?
Well, I'm no elf expert. It's not really my thing, but I would say definitively, without a doubt, the best elf commander is Rathalos Llanowar Emissary. We know that for a fact because the card is banned. You cannot play this in Commander.
Then it's not the best commander because it's not a commander because it's banned.
It is the best. It is the best. It's so good that you cannot play it. It is 2 green mana for a 2/1. Tap, add 1 green mana to your mana pool for each forest you control.
But it's banned.
Yeah.
That means...
But at one point, it was legal.
And at that point, it was the best commander.
Mm-hmm.
But now it is not.
We didn't specify what time period that we're talking about.
My new layer of my job, form questions that Veggie cannot wiggle around.
I am very good at wiggling.
So tell me, what was so broken about this commander and why is it banned?
Because being able to ramp so aggressively by turn 2, usually like turn 1 or something, was just both incredibly powerful, very easy to generate like infinite mana on turn 2 or something, and also just not fun because it would be the same game every time. Oh, okay, the Rathalos player played it and they made it untap, and we all lost on turn 2.
Yeah, there's lands as well that untap. There's a bunch of other elves that let you untap. Yeah, there's a lot of elves that would make this busted.
There's so many elves that put more forests into play. So like suddenly, it's tapping for like 6 really fast, and it's too much.
Turn 3, 7 mana is super easy. You go turn 1 dork, turn 2 this thing, and then all of a sudden turn 3 you have 7. That's quite aggressive to poop out your entire hand. I am a little surprised it's banned though. We've been tentatively playing with the idea of doing a decked out episode of banned commanders. Would this be something you would put on your list?
I would put it on the list. We'd have to play a couple games because they'd be over real fast.
That's okay for short games. All right, let's go ahead and move on to my honorable mention. And honestly, Veggie, I'm not sure why this isn't your honorable mention. So let's talk about Legolas Master Archer.
Yeah, he's good. Legolas is 1 and 2 green for 1/4 reach. Whenever you cast a spell that targets Legolas, you put a counter on him. And whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you don't control, Legolas deals damage to it equal to its power. To up to 1 target creature. It doesn't even have to be that creature.
So this isn't necessarily a creature type elf commander, but it is just an elf commander. I think it was very good. You played it on the show actually for our Lord of the Rings non-precon themed games, and this deck was nuts. I thought it was super fun. It was a unique, cool build, and it was mono green that packed a punch. And I even really liked the play that you made to sort of like stop a lethal attack, like a lethal play at instant speed. This thing was amazing.
He's really strong. I just didn't think of him as... I was going to say he doesn't feel like an elf, but like he definitely feels like an elf. Just the deck doesn't feel like an elf deck.
Most of the time, I agree. I picked this as an elf commander, not as an elf themed, not the commander of an elf themed deck for sure. So maybe I missed the assignment. But I feel like most elves specifically do give you the vibe that you should have an elf creature type deck. And that is just not the case here. All right, let's go ahead and move on to your guys' number 5. And again, make sure we have the best list possible. Use the link down below in the description to vote on our next topics to make sure that your commanders are counted. So number 5 here, we've got...
Marwyn the Nurturer. Very elf. 2 and a green for a 1/1. Whenever another elf enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it can tap equal to its power.
Yeah, she elfs pretty hard.
Yeah.
So this is not just one of the most popular elf commanders, it is also one of the most popular elves to play. I feel like there are so many elves in Commander now that you know, your 99, your 30 something creatures or whatever can vary a lot because there are so many good elves, right? You can pick and choose which ones you like and not really be wrong. But I feel like this is kind of the exception, that this is in every single one consistently.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised to see an elf deck that's not running Marwyn somewhere.
But I see like a ton of lists where like Elvish Well-Wisher, oh, that's not surprising. Or if it's not there, I'm not surprised, right? There's just so many good ones that you can really pick and choose. But this is a staple and fantastic in the command zone.
Yeah, because this is like everything that elves want to do. It rewards you for going wide and playing lots of elves, but it also, in the meantime, makes a very strong creature in itself. And if it's your commander, then, you know, commander damage then is on the table. And also makes a ton of mana. So play bunch of elf, make big mana, use mana to play bunch of elf. That's the pure elf game plan.
Or use it as an enabler for your payoffs, like Shallosaurus Shepherd. Whatever, brain smush, okay? And I've played this several times where this was just like a massive 8+ power creature that like my opponents couldn't deal with. And then the couple of times I didn't have great attacks, I would be like, great, dump mana into doing whatever, replay my commander.
Yeah. Crater Hoof Behemoth. Yeah.
A Schrader Hoof, yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 4.
I like this one. Galadriel, Light of Valinor. 2, a green, a white, and a blue with Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you choose one of these things that hasn't been chosen yet. Either make 3 green mana, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or scry 2 and draw a card.
I feel like a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have liked this one as much, but I feel like we've gotten quite a bit of support in the past 3-ish years with blue and elves. I feel like we've gotten a lot of elf wizards because I feel like in draft sets, there's been a lot of like wizard sub-themes in blue. So we've just ended up with elf wizard because it just kind of makes sense because you can't make them all merfolk.
I wasn't even thinking about it that way. I'm just like, oh, good. I get some counter spells with my elves. That's a good point. There are more blue, or at least, you know, half blue elves now that are pretty relevant that you only really get to play in this or like a few others.
And now we have access, elves now also have access to Fairies Protection and Smothering Tithe and whatever other good nonsense you really want to put in there.
Yeah.
So you get everything.
Yeah, these are 2 colors that you don't typically see with elves. It's like either mono green or green and black tend to be the most popular elf combinations. But
yeah, Keldheim, that was the green black was just an actual theme in that set particularly. So you saw a ton of it.
I guess maybe a more defensive kind of elves, like a very interactive elves. So you're maybe
elf control.
Yeah. Because also even Galadriel herself limits you to how much you're rewarded for going wide. Like she at best only gives you things for the first 3 creatures that are coming into play on your turn.
Yeah, you can only put 3 creatures in per turn.
Only 3. That's pretty small for elves, from what I understand.
That is pretty busted, though, if you're doing those things 3 times. Oh my gosh. And honestly, I don't mind the last 4, 5, and 6 creatures not getting +1/+1 counters on them. I think that's probably okay. I like that the scry also fuels the other ones, kind of helps you get to them.
Yes.
This hasn't been played on the show yet, but hopefully we will get to see it soon. Moving on to your guys' number 3.
This one has been played on the show. It's Ezuri Renegade Leader. A 1 and 2 green for a 2/2. You can pay 1 green to regenerate another target elf, or 2 and 3 green. Your elves get +3/+3 and trample until end of turn.
This was played by Dana Fisher in like episode 5-ish, give or take, very early on. And how you feeling about this deck, Veggie?
It kind of ran me over a little bit.
It stomped you into the mud.
Yeah.
You should not have played blue against Dana Fisher.
It's both protecting all of your elves and giving you a very direct win condition.
Yeah, I actually find that I like this more than most of them because I have trouble with my elf decks. We just actually aired an episode very recently, this past week. Or maybe it's coming up soon. Actually, I think it's coming up soon. But I play an elf deck and I'm having trouble getting win conditions. That one win condition that I find gets answered and I have a bunch of little measly 1/1s. So it is tough if you're not playing like a card that shall not be named just yet, or a card like this that you have a consistent win con that you can keep putting out. And elf decks aren't really punished for being murdered because they have infinite mana. So like the mana tax on your win condition is minor.
Yeah. When you're yes, it is a little bit different from like Marwyn though, because this really relies on the other cards in your deck to work. Because it's not giving you any inherent advantage. You're not drawing cards, you're not generating mana. This is just like, hey, I know I'm gonna be able to get this every game, but it's just like one pretty good piece, but I've got to get some other elves that are either fueling me by, generating a lot of tokens or the mana or whatever. And this then gets me there.
Let's go ahead and move to number 2. This is a mild cheat.
It's a big cheat, especially depending on who you ask on the internet.
All right, let's hear it.
Number 2, best elf commander is Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. Subject of considerable discourse in the community right now. It's 2, a red, a green, and a white for a 5/5 wolf. Just wolf. Vigilance, trample, ward 3. Whenever Voja attacks, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves you control, and then draw a card for each wolf you control.
I'm fine with it. He has a saddle.
Yeah, he's great. Like, character, awesome.
But I'm saying he counts as an elf because he's the elf's mount. I think this is an elf commander.
I also agree that it's an elf commander. Looking at you, Scarab God, I'm like, hey, it's not the type. It doesn't count. This is undeniably an elf commander.
I think Scarab God's a weird one, right? Because it makes zombies, so it synergizes well with zombies, but it doesn't have to have any zombies in the deck to do its thing.
Right.
Versus this being like very clearly needs them to be elves to do a thing. So maybe this is my next elf deck.
Oh, people will be very, very upset with you if you do
Why?
this. So this commander has people up in arms because of the ward 3 on it.
Why?
Because it does a lot, like on its own, right? So it's that effect, even just one attack, is a lot of advantage. You're either getting a lot of counters on everything, or you're drawing a bunch of cards, or maybe both. And it's kind of guaranteed to do that. Who's able to pay ward 3?
I mean,
at that point,
this thing costs 5. Path to Exile. Like, there's tons of things that you can take care of this moderately cheaply. I don't know.
And see, that is the other side of the argument. Is like, well,
there's so much nasty stuff. People like, reanimating Eldrazi's and doing crazy nonsensical things. You're telling me attacking with a 5-drop is what's gonna break people? Nah, I don't believe it. I do not accept this. People just hate good, clean magic.
I also think this commander is fine. I think it's very powerful. I agree. I think it does a lot of stuff. And I think if it gets going, you will probably win with it. But there are a lot of commanders that do that thing. I do wish that it was a little more interactable, because not everybody is going to have specifically a swords or like a Pongify or something that costs very little that can deal with this. So the odds that it does its thing are very, very high.
Unless this person was on the play, a Beast Within or a generous gift, those all work. Plenty of board clears at 5 and 6. It's fine. I think this is fine. I will fight the internet. And now I'm going to build it just because. Because mean comments will be good for our algorithm.
Speaking of mean comments, what's number 1, nerd girl?
Lathril, Blade of the Elves. She's great, especially if you read her all the way through.
Let's do that right now. Lathril is 2, a black and a green for a 2/3 with Menace. Whenever Lathril deals combat damage to a player, you make that many 1/1 green elves. And you can tap Lathril and tap 10 untapped elves you control. Each opponent loses 10 life.
That's it. That's all it does. And that's pretty good. And good to almost win the game. But you will definitely also win the game if you get 10 more life.
Yes. There's a lot of words on there. And if you haven't already seen our episode
Pet decks, I think.
Yes. I don't remember what number, but yes, with
Maulhound. So we got a lot. So we did pet decks, but like all of our decks have been on the show. So like we try our best to make decks that sort of fit the theme. So Maulhound is bringing his pet deck. So I made Lathril because it was a deck I've always wanted to build and I really love elves. So that's my pet deck. And yeah, first time I used the ability, I used it in response to being dead, but gaining 10 life would have made me not dead, and I didn't read it all the way through. And then I should have untapped and killed Veggie on the crackback, but instead I scooped up my cards, and I'm sad. So it turns out every piece of this card is very, very important to winning.
She's really good.
Yes.
She is like, I want to say, I think top 5 most popular commanders period.
I think that is the case. And I think we saw when we were looking briefly at EDH Rec, I think it had there was 20,000 of these decks on EDH Rec, like so many. Yeah, 19.9 thousand of you have made this commander, including ours. If you want to see my list, you can find it on the Decked Out Moxfield account. Do you love her or hate her? Because I feel like that's there's no middle ground here.
I love that she makes people happy that are playing her. This is not for me. For multiple reasons. It's like, I don't know, the elf game plan is not really my thing.
It's my thing.
Commanders that are very, very popular are not really my thing. But she's popular for a reason, because she does so many different things that people enjoy. You know, she goes to combat, she makes a bunch of elves, she drains people for a very absurd amount of damage. And there are lots of different ways to build Lathril, and each one of those makes somebody out there in the commander world very happy. 20,000 of you. So that's the thing that I like about Lathril. Just wouldn't play it.
I would play this. I feel like if we do a redemption episode, this has to be my redemption episode. Because yeah, I should have won that game. Not particularly close. All right, so that is the end of our top 5 and honorable mentions, but we still have another segment. We're actually going to be going over a deck list that fits the theme of today's episode. Why I no words today. So thanks to one of our patrons that has submitted a deck list for us to check out, we're going to be looking at their Elves list.
You can retake it if you want, but otherwise I'll just use it.
Yeah, just use it.
Today's deck list was submitted by our patron Leafy, and it's a Rashmi Eternity's Crafter list. I think this is a really cool commander, and is one of the few elves that I'd be very on board with. And the reason is this big old chunk of ability. It's 2, a green and a blue for a 2/3. Whenever you cast your first spell each turn, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with cost less than the spell that you played, then you can cast that thing off the top of your library for free. If you don't, then you still put it into your hand.
So that's really good for elves, because most of your elves are cheap, so chances are you can get a lot of stuff there. This is an interesting elf creature type deck, just because I feel like I don't typically see this as an elf themed deck. I see people trying to abuse it as sort of like a cascade type effect.
Yes.
So interesting. I would be curious to see how many decks actually use this as elves or other things, because I think this will be quite unique.
We have our shirtless broken friend to start off with. I think we talked about our feelings on Oko in Commander before?
I don't think he's all that strong, but I actually think not strong commanders are better. planeswalkers are better. Because you just like play him, make a food, and everybody's like, okay, I'll deal with him later. And then you get like, you're getting a few more turns with it versus if you're slamming something big and impactful, just all of a sudden you're arch enemy.
I don't know. It's a little tricky because he does have that reputation, but hopefully commander players are less familiar.
They're less scarred for life. Yeah. Frilled Mystic. You get access to some really cool stuff in blue. I forgot all about this beautiful, beautiful elf lizard lady.
Oh, I have never forgotten. This is this is a card that makes me very happy.
Me too, actually. Because I feel like it's a little bit more tempo-y than your typical like counter. Mm-hmm. So I love that. I was a big Frilled Mystic fan when this was draft playable.
Notably, Rashmi triggers on the first spell that you play each turn.
Ooh, okay.
So any elves with flash are more triggers that you can get. Dorks and ways to generate tokens, and then elf lords.
This is one of my new favorite elves, basically, of any of the new stuff from Lord of the Rings. I think Arwen is amazing.
This is very strong.
Can steamroll some games. I played that in a non-elf deck, and it was just bonkers. Played it in a +1/+1 counter deck. I like the Reclamation Sage, an elf that adds some free removal into your deck. I'm a big fan of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I remember correctly, you used this very well when you were playing elves, which goes great with Reclamation Sage.
Yeah. There's so many ETB elves, and you just get so much value out of it.
The Realm Walker here, already very good with whatever creature type that you're using. Not only does it give you that additional card advantage, with Rashmi, you always know what your top card is that you're going to cascade into.
That's very cute.
Yeah, so you can set yourself up well without having to guess.
I wonder if there's a couple more things like that we can, this is also an elf, so it's extra good, but I feel like there's probably some room for other things that allow us to manipulate the top of our deck, like Soothsaying or something along those lines that allow you to end of your opponent's turn, look around, do some things, and set up some good turns if we can find some good space.
I wonder if we will see those things.
Oh, I get it. I was like, why are you being so weird? I wasn't even going to say anything because he's like, I'm just used to that now.
We start to see some X spells, and those work great with Rashmi because you can make sure that your first spell on your turn is very big, since a lot of the elves that we saw already, low cost. So that you're going to be able to put something large out, especially if you're seeing like a big spell on top from Realm Walker. You don't have to worry about whiffing and just drawing the card.
Yeah, you want to make sure you pay X is 10 so you can hit your 3 mana elf.
That's right. I mean, or you pay X is 10, you hit your expropriate off the top. Raise the Palisade card that I like. That's it. Because it's like a blue board wipe that's one-sided.
Wasn't there a new one that's similar to that was in the new Merfolk deck?
I think, yes, Wave Goodbye, which is bounce everything that doesn't have a counter on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, which all might be pretty good here since we saw multiple ways to put counters on all of your stuff. Instants.
Wow,
there's a lot. 18 of them, yes. Probably because they were thinking the same thing that we were thinking from earlier, that Rashmi, you get a trigger on each turn, so you want to have an instant to be able to play on everybody's turn.
Yeah, and we have some good ones. Collected Company, Cyclonic Rift, some honestly fun, great cards.
Did you just say fun, great cards after you mentioned Cyclonic Rift?
Well, the fun was the Collected Company, and then the great card was Cyclonic Rift, in fairness. But yes, I don't like Cyclonic Rift.
I'll actually defend it here. The reason that Cyclonic Rift is usually not a good time is because it's played by someone that doesn't have a win con. So they're just like, you're going to kill me. All right, everybody's stuff is gone. Restart the game.
And start over for another 45 minutes, yeah.
Right. But if you're putting it in this elf deck that probably has an entire board filled with things that will kill you if they can get through, and then everybody's stuff is gone, the game is then over.
Yes. I actually think that I like Cyclonic Rift in the decks that I play, but every time I see it on the other 3 playmats, it's just like agonizing. And then they don't even win. Someone else wins after a 45-minute rebuild.
Right.
And then I feel bad.
Yes, Cyclonic Rift should be used as a win con, not a defense stoppy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sold like 20 Cyclonic Rifts for $1 each because it was a decent draft rare, and I drafted a lot of this. Like, a lot of it. And then I was like, oh, this random thing of garbage is $1? Sick. Sell it. And then here we are years later, and it's $43. I had so many. Like, this was pick 8, pick 9, any blue deck. I'd be like, sure, pick 8, take it. I'll play it as a 2-mana instant speed bounce. Sold them all for $1.
Yeah.
You know how many coffees we could buy if I had those 20 Cyclonic Rifts back?
If any of you out there have spare Cyclonic Rifts, then you can send things to us at
My P.O. box.
Yeah. If you're any of the people that NerdGirl sold Cyc Rifts to, then you're morally obligated now to send them back.
For one Cyclonic Rift a day, you could feed a veggie and a nerd girl.
Yeah, she'll return your $1. We get some more nice little elf bonuses from the recent Lord of the Rings Commander set. Galadriel Ambush, which is kind of like a one-sided fog if you're playing all elves. Windswift Slice, this was great in the Legolas deck. Dealing damage and making elves for excess damage.
It also has Fierce Guardianship, some Blue Sun Zenith. There's some crazy blue things in here for an elf deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Blue Sun Zenith would feel so great with that big old stack of mana that you always have.
That's a good way for the elf decks that I play that, they poop out a bunch of dudes, mostly mana dorks. My one win con gets eaten. And then you get to actually draw into some more. I feel like that's what I'm always missing. Nexus
of Fate, I think, is at least the second extra turn spell that we saw. We just see Expropriate earlier, and I think maybe one other one, which is terrifying, I think, for elves.
That's a really nice mechanic, because a lot of times with elves, you go wide, you can kill one person, but you leave yourself completely dead to the other one or two. And then if you can lock it up with a second turn, at least you can either also kill another person or set up the defenses again, because the elves really do block very well. Very few artifacts.
Yeah, I guess when you don't really need mana rocks, then what else? Like, elves don't really have artifact synergies.
I do like the Life Crafter's Bestiary, if I remember if that's what it's called. Yeah, I like that card a lot. It's a good way to draw extra cards in my creature decks.
Especially when all of your creatures cost 1. More Lord of the Rings goodies. Kind of a knockout for elves. Plus, it's another card that lets you look at the top of your library to set up for Rashmi.
Moving on to the lands. Looks like no expenses spared here. We have the Boseiju, Flooded Strand. Yeah, the mana base looks great. Wirewood Lodge, let's go. Woo! Go Elves!
Ooh, actually though, Yavimaya Hollow here, your $75 land, but like that's very good.
There's even the off-color fetches. Jiminy Christmas. I mean, honestly, this mana base seems like overkill, which is not a bad thing.
There may be a smarter reason that they did this. I think what Leafy's going for here is all of these fetches change the top card of your library.
Yeah.
So if you're already seeing it from one of the cards that we saw earlier, and you're like, oh, I don't want to cascade into this Llanowar Elves, then you're like, great, I'll crack this fetch, we'll put something else on top.
So, Veggie, tell me, what do you think? That's the end of this deck list from Leafy. Oh, I didn't even notice. Leafy submitted an elf deck. It's very, very flavorful. I appreciate it. Bonus points for me. What do you think of this deck list overall?
I'm really happy to see this kind of build. I think you mentioned it right as we started, but like Rashmi is usually done in a very non-elf way. It's just, I'm focused entirely on this ability and like, how to maximize value out of that. And it's not elf-centered. But this both gives you a unique build for Rashmi, also allows you to run some blue in your elves for a very different style deck that is still certainly elfy. I
agree. I like this deck list a lot. I think it was a little too blue in that I don't like Fierce Guardianship. I'm not a huge fan of Cyclonic Rift, but I like it in this deck because it's creature oriented. But I feel like it was a little too blue. I would like some of these more control-y blue cards to be elf related. But that's just my personal flavor take. Overall, I think the deck was really cool. I like Rashmi as like a unique commander, and I do think having access to the blue is a huge boon to what elves are trying to do. So I like the deck. Veggie, what is the Veggie score here? 1 to 10.
This is a pretty solid 7 for me. Elves, not really my thing, but this approach to them I think is very much on the right track for a Veggie deck. I would just want to see it lean more heavily into a weird approach to it, even like a more blue approach to it. So like maybe some more top deck manipulation, or some ways to like bring things to the top, or like sneaky ways to cast high cost spells without actually paying for them, stuff like that.
I'll just match you point for point. Elf, definitely my thing. But I would love to see us lean more heavily into what Rashmi is trying to do. And that means remove some of the just generically good blue cards and turn them into something that fits the theme of how we tried to build the Rashmi, which is going to make your deck worse, not going to lie, but that would make it better on my scale. So instead of like Fierce Guardianship, I would like to see another thing that looks at the top card, maybe allows you to play lands off the top of your deck, or creatures, not just because we want to do those things, but because it helps with Rashmi. And those can be blue. I would like them better if they were less controlling. But that's just me. I'm going to give this a 7 as well. Very similar to Veggie's score for slightly different reasons. I loved the tech of the lands, so many fetches. I didn't even think about it at first, only because we didn't have a ton of things that looked at the top. But if we added a few more of these, I think this is a fantastic mana base. And you had Wirewood Lodge, so you're always going to get extra points from me. I love those lands. I always put the Goblin one in my Goblin decks too, even though it's like not nearly as good. It's like Goblin Burrows.
Yeah. I want to be able to run the bird one. I loved that bird one. And it was not good because then you had to play birds. But I was like, it's like 2 mana, sack a bird to draw a card. I was like, oh.
Anyway, totally not related to elves.
Yeah.
So Leafy, thank you so much for submitting a Patreon sponsored deck list for us to review here on the show. If you guys would like to have your deck list featured here and have us check it out and rate it very harshly, you can always check out our Patreon and submit a deck list similarly.
There was also the Beast Land that was like a red and a green. That was rare, and I thought that was very cool because it makes them fight, but that's not good anymore.
I like all those kinds of like specific lands, like even like Keswick Wolfron. Like anytime they make anything that's very specific to turning dudes sideways or creature type, having creature decks, even if it like sacks them, I'm always a fan. I feel like we could talk all day.
Yeah.
Should we just film another one? And
so if you liked the video, hit like. And if you really liked it, click subscribe.
Oh, last thing. Check the description to vote on our next topics. And if you guys would like to check out these deck lists that are submitted by our patrons, we actually have a Moxfield account for you where we keep all of the deck lists that we have featured on our show. You could take a look at those decks and see if there's one that you like. You can go back and watch some of the old shows where we do deck techs on them. And if you want to submit your own, you could do that through Patreon. And if you would like to build any of the decks that you see featured on the show, for the remainder of the month, you guys get 8% off with TOA. There's a link down below in the description. If you use code DECKEDOUT, you get 8% off of all of your cards. And after the end of the month, it's 5% off. Now you can like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Commander Countdown.
Commander Countdown. You can't surprise me with it.
I tried.